Within the iron walls of the Offensive Magic Academy, one absolute truth reigns supreme. Healers have no business being here, yet our protagonist begs to differ. Will stands as a prodigy of restoration, yet he forces his way into this brutal institution. Naturally, the masses wait with bated breath to watch his spectacular failure. An instructor, eager to crush this delusion, drags him into a ruthless mock battle to prove a point. The duel erupts. The instructor summons the very earth to imprison him, but Will dances through the chaos. He channels healing mana into his own legs, amplifying his speed to supernatural levels. A jagged earth spike nearly impales him, but he weaves away just in time. Suddenly, the hunter becomes the hunted. He closes the gap in a flash, his dagger gleaming for the strike. However, a simple blade against a battle mage is futile. The instructor encases himself in diamond-hard earth armor, sneering at the weak healer who dares to scratch him. But Will, he has a devastating solution prepared. In this realm, mages are shackled by the fragility of human flesh. They must suppress their true potential, or risk tearing their own bodies apart. To exceed one's limits is to invite self-destruction. But if Will shatters those mental limiters, he can unleash a cataclysmic force, even if it means pulverizing his own bones. And for a master healer, that price is a bargain. Pain is irrelevant. Will charges in, his fist glowing with the energy of a kamikaze strike. The sound of snapping bones echoes as his arm shatters on impact, but the force is unstoppable. He punches straight through the impenetrable earth defense. The instructor collapses before he can even process the impossible. Instant knockout. But this begs the question, why is a monster like this hiding in a healer's skin? The answer lies in a blood-soaked past, a timeline where incompetence led to ruin, and Will paid the ultimate price. This is the tragedy of his previous life. One would assume that flawless performance commands respect from one's seniors, but for our protagonist, excellence became a curse. His reward for perfection was a blade in the back from his own commander. Will was just a man, but he possessed a gift that defied the laws of nature. A divine healing ability, unique in all existence, resided solely within him. He could reverse death's door itself. Horrific mutilations were mere scratches to him. A severed limb, a trifle. He could regenerate flesh and bone in a heartbeat. He served on the hellish front lines, standing with the last bastions of humanity against the Demon Lord's legion. These were the very monsters that had already reduced the glorious kingdom of Grandald to ash and ruin. The soldiers fought with the desperation of the damned, clawing for survival against an evil that had already swallowed the rest of the world. Yet amidst this slaughter, Will was a pacifist. He possessed zero combat capability. His sole purpose was to act as a lifeline, dragging souls back from the abyss of death over and over again. But let us be honest, frail mortals were nothing but fodder against the nightmares crawling out of the deepest pits of hell. The cycle was gruesome. Soldiers returned as broken meat, and Will stitched them back together, forcing them to return to the grinder. Eventually, the human spirit shattered. The soldiers grew sick of this endless torture of dying and reviving. They accepted their grim fate. They were doomed. They craved the sweet release of death on the battlefield rather than enduring another second of this hell. This was why the blade pierced him. The captain believed Will was a cruel god, ignorant of the agony his comrades felt every time he forced them to live and fight again. Broken and hopeless, the defenders finally gave up. They abandoned the line, allowing the Colossi to swarm in and feast upon the remnants of the kingdom. Will stood frozen, watching his comrades perish and his homeland crumble into dust before his very eyes. As he looked up at the apocalyptic dragon looming above, he finally understood the hell he had trapped them in. His greatest gift had become his darkest sin. If only he possessed the strength to kill rather than just cure. If only he could have fought by their side. They might have survived. Fueled by regret and a burning desire to protect what was left, he grabbed a mere pebble, a healer, charging at a god of destruction. It was a suicide run. A man against a dragon. The result was instant death, but fate was not finished with him. He snapped his eyes open. 5 years in the past. He had returned to the days before he became the Saint of Healing, a title he now despised with every fiber of his being. Vowing to rewrite history, he swore never to be just a support again. He would enter the Academy of Offensive Magic. His target, the Schwartz Academy, the pinnacle of combat arts. In this world, the laws of magic are absolute. One cannot master both creation and destruction. Mages must choose a single path. But Will is done following the rules. He intends to shatter the natural order and achieve the impossible. Armed with future knowledge, he will forge a new path. He will not just be a healer or a fighter. He will be the ultimate hybrid. To begin his ascension, he must breach the gates of the elite. He sets his sights on the most prestigious institution in the realm, Schwartz Academy. This is the forge where raw talent is beaten into legendary steel. Even the strongest battle mage of his previous life was birthed from these halls. However, a massive obstacle stands in his way. Will is a registered healer, and Schwartz Academy does not accept support classes. Noble families typically squander mountain-sized fortunes just to get their incompetent children into this prestigious academy. But our protagonist, well, his pockets are completely empty. Even with his divine mastery of healing arts, the tuition fee is an obstacle he cannot overcome before the deadline hits. As he drowns in these dark thoughts, the door creaks open. His sister steps inside. The mere sight of her breathing, living, standing there causes hot tears to flood his vision. Seeing his sudden breakdown, she innocently assumes he must be in physical pain, perhaps a stomach ache. Will frantically wipes away the evidence, forcing a smile and blaming a speck of dust. But inside, his soul is roaring with relief. Seeing his sister alive again is a joy that nearly brings him to his knees. A fire ignites in his heart. In this timeline, he swears a blood oath to protect her from the apocalypse that devoured her last time. And not just her, he will save every single soul he failed in his past life. Suddenly, a plan strikes him like a bolt of lightning. The path forward has revealed itself. However, before the plan unfolds, you must understand the power structure of the Magic Academy Federation. This is the supreme authority that governs every mage in the kingdom, controlling the laws and the curriculum of magical education. Sitting on that throne is Chairman Arnellum Goldran, who also serves as the principal of the elite Schwartz Academy. But recently, the chairman has abandoned his duties, turning a blind eye to the Federation. The reason soon became a tragedy known to few. It was his beloved granddaughter, Marie. This legendary figure, Arnellum Goldran, is merely a desperate grandfather watching his family fade away. He swore to Marie that he would find a miracle worker, a mage capable of shattering the curse of her illness. In Will's previous life, that promise went unfulfilled. The chairman failed to find a savior in time, and Marie's death became a catalyst for despair. That is exactly why Will is currently infiltrating the chairman's private estate like a shadow. Fate is on his side. He doesn't need to announce his presence. The chairman is already staring him down. The old master recognizes the intruder immediately, the prodigy from Helig. After all, Will's reputation as a healing genius has already echoed across the entire kingdom. For a mage of your caliber to sneak around like a common thief. The chairman's voice drips with disappointment and suspicion. Internally, Will accepts the rebuke. The old man is absolutely right. Without the grim memories of the future, he never would have dared to invade such a powerful figure's sanctuary. But propriety is a luxury for the peaceful. He had to break in. He is the only one who can pull her back from death's door. The chairman's eyes narrow. He knows the world runs on equivalent exchange. He demands to know what this young upstart wants. Will cuts through this tension. Time is the enemy here, not me. The negotiations can wait. Saving her life cannot. Recognizing the conviction in the boy's eyes, the chairman steps aside. Will takes his place at the bedside, prepared to wage war against the disease, but he feels a crushing pressure on his back. It is the chairman's gaze, heavy as a mountain, piercing through his soul. The message is clear. One mistake, one slip-up, and Will's life ends here. He takes a stabilizing breath, ignoring the killing intent, and activates his magic. As the energy flows, he feels the limitation of his younger body. His mana pool is a shallow puddle compared to the ocean he possessed in his past life. But raw power is nothing without control. The complex healing formulas are burned into his mind, and he executes them with godlike precision. Moments later, the impossible happens. Marie's eyelids flutter open. Her vision clears, and the first thing she sees is the face of her savior looking dashing and heroic. Her face instantly erupts into a shade of crimson. Overwhelmed with shyness, she buries herself under the blankets. Meanwhile, the chairman stands frozen, unable to process the miracle. Grandfather. Her voice is steady. She confesses that for the first time in years, The pain is gone. The iron facade of the chairman crumbles. Tears of pure relief stream down the old man's face. The heavy chains of worry that bound him for so long have finally shattered. And it is all thanks to the young mage standing before him. Later, in the drawing room, the atmosphere has shifted. The chairman offers him a blank check. Name your desire, and it shall be yours. Will smiles calmly. He won't ask for the moon. His request is simple, yet shocking. I stand at the apex of healing magic, Will declares. There is no one left to teach me. He has hit the level cap for support skills. Now, he craves a new weapon. I wish to enroll in Schwartz Academy. The chairman is baffled. This request defies all logic. A genius healer abandoning his divine gift to learn combat among beginners, it is unheard of, but a promise from Arnellum Goldrin is absolute. He grips the young man's hand. The deal is sealed. Will has secured his entry. Somewhere deep within the Academy archives, a shadowy instructor reviews the new files. He scoffs at the application. Enrolling a healer with zero offensive capability into a combat school. He views the chairman's decision as madness. Little does he know, a monster has just entered the academy. The day of destiny finally dawns. The new students gather in the grand assembly hall, where the chairman stands ready to unveil the glory of his institute, Schwartz Academy, a prestigious boarding fortress dedicated solely to the art of destruction and offensive magic, boasting a curriculum unlike any other. Its sprawling grounds are home to countless arenas forged for battle. State-of-the-art research facilities and a library containing the world's wisdom make this place a true sanctuary for power. Legends born here roam the world, ensuring the academy holds the full backing of the kingdom itself. Simply put, no other sanctuary on Earth offers such a perfect environment for mastering the complexities of offensive magic. Yet, amidst these elites stands an anomaly. Will, a mere healer, has dared to enroll in this place, a feat entirely unprecedented in history. Naturally, the path stretching out before him is one paved with jagged thorns and endless ridicule, but Will is prepared to walk through hell if it means becoming the offensive mage he yearns to be. However, cold reality strikes harder than any dream. During the very first practical lesson, beads of cold sweat race down Will's face. His task is simple: strike a target with a flame spell. He summons a spark, but the fire flickers and dies instantly, vanishing into thin air. This isn't just a fluke, it is a recurring nightmare that refuses to end. Adding fuel to the fire, his instructor is a disgrace to the title of teacher, ruthlessly exploiting Will's weakness to crush his spirit. He issues a cruel ultimatum. Will is banished to the remote training grounds until he can successfully scorch the dummy. Will pleads for guidance, desperate for even a hint of instruction, but it is clear this instructor holds a deep-seated vendetta against him. Without proper teaching, mastery is impossible, yet the malice in the teacher's eyes tells the whole story. In his arrogance, he views teaching a healer as a waste of precious time. Desperate, Will begs for access to the library, hoping to find salvation within the ancient texts. The tyrant mocks him once more, sneering that a healer has no business reading literature meant for true mages. Seizing the moment, a blonde aristocrat launches a cowardly ambush from behind. A blast of magic slams into Will, forcing him to his knees. Caught completely off guard, Will is defenseless. But the aggressor only sees this as an invitation to trample the weak. To him, Will's vulnerability is a sin that must be punished. He flaunts the academy's hierarchy, declaring that soft healers like Will should disappear for daring to stand among the elite. It is a sickening display. Teacher and student, united in their cruelty, treat Will like dirt beneath their boots. That night, under the moonlight, our protagonist collapses onto a bench, utterly drained. His pursuit of offensive magic has hit a dead end. He knew bridging the gap between healing and destruction would be a monumental struggle. The two disciplines demand fundamentally different energies. Mana is the power of the mind, the ultimate weapon unleashed through complex formulas. It is a force that bends to the caster's sheer will. Channeling mana for destruction creates offensive magic. Healers, however, possess calm mana. This is exactly why he came to Schwartz Academy. As the premier institution for offensive mages, surely there is a method here to refine his energy. Will is convinced he can manipulate the flow, converting his static healing energy into dynamic, destructive power. This conversion is the wall he must break. Yet, He cannot even attend lectures because that wretched instructor has barred his path. Still, Will refuses to surrender. He holds on to the hope of finding the one person who saved him in his past life. Even if only for her sake, enduring this hellish academy will be worth every second of pain. He cannot blindly search forever. He begins to strategize, but suddenly, a sharp, familiar voice pierces the night air. Will turns and freezes. Standing there, radiating an aura of absolute strength, is Veronica, the legendary warrior who once fought by his side. In his memories, she was a titan, one of the highest class offensive mages to ever walk the earth. He had mourned her death in the tragic war of the previous timeline, but here, in this regressed world, she breathes again. Before he can speak, she draws her blade. It is the same legendary sword capable of severing reality itself. Her pressure is immense. Having that cold steel pointed at his throat is a terrifying reunion. It seems she is hunting an intruder on campus, and her sharp gaze has landed squarely on Will. Will frantically denies the accusation. If she swings that sword, he won't just die, he'll need to reincarnate into a third life. Sensing his sincerity, she lowers her guard. Seizing the chance, he asks the question burning in his chest, is she truly Veronica? Her eyes narrow in offense. To his shock, she scolds him for addressing a teacher so casually. He knew she was his senior in the past life, but to be a teacher here, the timeline has shifted in unexpected ways. It turns out she is a monster of genius, a prodigy who defied all logic to ascend to the rank of professor at such a tender age. For Will, this woman was the beacon of hope he had been searching for, the key to unlocking the forbidden door of offensive magic. With the desperation of a man on the edge, Will requests to join her lecture, knowing she is his final lifeline, but his hopes are instantly crushed. She strikes him down with a cold truth: she has not opened a single course for enrollment. As a newly appointed instructor who skyrocketed through the ranks, she remains blissfully ignorant of the Academy's bureaucratic web. For this academic year, the heavens have assigned Veronica a different role, a mere assistant instructor dedicated to student inquiries. The administration believed her youth would bridge the gap between master and disciple, making her the perfect pillar of support for the students. However, reality is far crueler. Not a single soul dares to approach her, paralyzed by her overwhelming presence. Our protagonist knows exactly why. Who would dare consult a woman who unsheathes a lethal blade at the slightest provocation? Yet, where others see danger, Will sees a golden opportunity. This is his chance to turn the tables. He realizes he does not need a formal classroom. He can exploit her duty to force a private mentorship. Playing his cards right, he invokes her obligation to answer. He looks her in the eye and asks the impossible: how does a healer master the art of destruction? The moment the words leave his lips, Veronica's eyes narrow. She senses a disturbance in his mana flow that marks him as an anomaly. Recognition flashes across her face. This is the infamous freshman who caused a stir upon entering the Schwartz Academy. In all her years of cultivation, she has never witnessed a healer arrogant enough to walk the path of the war mage. Fortunately, Schwartz Academy possesses a secret technique, a method to cultivate the volatile power known as dynamic mana. Will believes this foundation is the key to his ascension. When Veronica confirms its existence, a fire of ambition ignites in his chest. But just as quickly, she douses that fire. She declares with absolute certainty that even with that method, he is destined to fail. The declaration strikes him like a physical blow, leaving him stunned as the truth unfolds. Veronica reveals the cruel mechanic of his existence. His vessel is already overflowing with an immense amount of static mana. Even if he tries to build dynamic mana from nothing, the overwhelming ocean of his static mana will simply swallow and dissolve it. Attempting to force the two opposing energies to coexist would only lead to ruin, rendering him unable to cast a single offensive spell. The path ahead turns pitch black. He realizes with horror that the laws of this world forbid a healer from wielding the power of destruction. A wave of bitterness washes over him. Why did the mysterious force that regressed him not provide a guide to this cruel new reality? Yet, his will remains unbroken. Even if he must defy the wisdom of ages and invent a new path himself, he refuses to surrender. He bows to the assistant professor, preparing to retreat, when Veronica's voice suddenly cuts through the air, halting him. She picks up the thread of her previous lesson, revealing that her explanation was not yet complete. While it is an iron law that healers cannot use offensive magic, There exists a loophole, a singular exception to the rule. Her words twist into a riddle that leaves our protagonist utterly bewildered by her logic. To demonstrate, Veronica draws her blade. The cold iron gleams with the promise of violence and death. She then shifts her gaze to a simple wooden bench, an object designed solely for rest. To the untrained eye, she is merely stating the obvious laws of nature. But beneath her simple words lies a profound martial philosophy. She effortlessly lifts the heavy timber, declaring that in the hands of a master, even a seat becomes an instrument of slaughter. Will stares in disbelief. How can such a slender, elegant woman possess the monstrous strength to wield that furniture like a twig? Veronica's lesson strikes at the core of combat. The purpose of an object is defined not by its creator, but by its wielder. To make him understand, she reaches out, her hand gently cups his cheek, a touch that sends a jolt of heat through his veins. For a fleeting second, the atmosphere turns tender until she unleashes a ruthless flick against his forehead. Pain explodes in his skull. She explains that the same hand used for comfort can instantly become a weapon of discipline. The agony clears his mind. Will's eyes widen as the epiphany crashes down upon him. Could his healing magic be wielded as a blade? It was a concept so foreign, so radical, that he had never once dared to imagine it. The magical world is divided by rigid dogma regarding mana types. But Veronica sees past the ancient prejudices. She sees potential in this boy. She acknowledges the sheer audacity it took for a healer to step foot into an academy dedicated to destruction. Furthermore, her senses tell her that the energy coursing through him is not that of a pure, docile saint. This is a revelation that even Will missed. Is this strange impurity a parting gift from the entity that rewound his time? With the cold steel of her blade pressed against his throat, she commands him, awaken the killer, instinct sleeping within your soul. If he masters this path, he will become a god among men, crushing any who dare oppose him. The morning sun rises, finding our protagonist deep in thought, dissecting his teacher's cryptic words from yesterday. She had woven a complex web of examples to prove her revolutionary point. But what truly shakes him to his core is her lack of prejudice. She views healers not as weaklings, but as untapped potential. Her ability to conjure such a profound theory on a whim borders on the terrifying. Will suspects she might be wielding this very power herself, but his revelation is shattered by the instructor's barking voice, spitting the word healer like a curse. Today's no ordinary lecture. The arena awaits. It is time for one-on-one combat simulations, and even a healer is expected to bleed. Of course, whether he possesses any offensive magic to defend his life is entirely his own burden to bear. The wretched instructor reveals the pairings with a cruel smirk. As fate would have it, our boy's thrown to the wolves, matched against that golden-haired tyrant from before. Will stands his ground. This is not just a student. Opulpus is a scion of a prestigious noble academy, backed by immense influence. He may be a spoiled child of privilege, but make no mistake, his talent as an offensive mage is lethal. Opulpus stands tall, victory already written in his mind. He sneers, asking if the little healer will run crying to his mother after being pulverized. Will takes a deep breath, fighting to keep the flames of his rage from consuming him entirely. Even with the wisdom of a future timeline, being mocked by a mere child tests the limits of his patience. However, this is the perfect crucible to test Veronica's theory. Eyes gleaming with intent, Will raises his hand, refusing to back down. Instead, he offers a dangerous gambit. He admits he lacks offensive talent, claiming this fight would be a meaningless waste of time without stakes. So, he places his entire future on the line. He declares that if he falls in this duel, he will vanish from Schwartz Academy forever. The professor's eyes light up with malicious delight. But there is a condition if Will triumphs. He demands the right to attend regular classes. It is a proposal dripping with insolence. Yet, Opulpus is so blinded by arrogance that he erupts into laughter, finding the very notion of a healer's victory absurd. In his eyes, Will is merely a desperate fool clinging to a fantasy, with absolutely zero chance of survival. The instructor, eager to see the healer humiliated, accepts the terms immediately. Both fighters take their stance. The signal is given. Opulpus wastes no time, his mana flaring as he manifests a swarm of radiant daggers. This is his signature art knife creation magic. He stands like a discount king of heroes, surrounded by an arsenal of golden blades. He unleashes the storm, the daggers scream through the air toward Will, as Opulpus mocks the defenseless healer. But Will remains unmoved. He strikes a meditative stance, focusing his mana to trigger his own awakening. The technique activates. In a blur of motion, his perception accelerates, allowing him to dance through the deadly rain of steel effortlessly. Behold the power of life manipulation. He commands the very essence of his own biology, pushing his physical stats to the absolute superhuman limit. But defense is merely the beginning. This power can be weaponized. Opulpus screams, dismissing it as blind luck, but our protagonist is already charging his aura for the counter. He snatches a dagger from midair with the grace of a master swordsman. He deflects the remaining barrage, rendering the golden weapons useless. The counterattack begins now. With a single stolen blade in hand, he prepares to end this charade. A stunned silence falls over the arena. The spectators' minds cannot process the impossible sight of a healer dominating a duel. They do not understand the truth. Will has not cast a single offensive spell. He is fighting purely with the devastating application of healing magic. Opulpus grits his teeth, his pride shattered. He desperately claims he was merely holding back his true power. He summons even more blades, believing quantity will somehow bridge the gap in skill. A second wave of golden death rains down, but Will moves like water, casually slashing every single projectile out of the sky until only shards remain on the floor. Unwilling to accept defeat, Opulpus pours his mana into one final gamble, manifesting a massive greatsword of pure energy. The shape of the weapon is questionable, to say the least. Jokes aside, Will recognizes the threat. Despite his arrogance, Opulpus possesses genuine talent and a deep reservoir of mana. Opulpus adds rotation to the massive blade, transforming it into a drilling missile aimed straight for Will's heart. It approaches with the force of a calamity, yet Will stands his ground and blocks the devastating strike with terrifying precision. Opulpus roars, his arsenal completely exhausted. Meanwhile, Will decides it is time to stop playing. He cranks his output up to the next level. The missile is slapped away like a toy. Before Opulpus can blink, Will vanishes, reappearing instantly behind him, whispering a cold promise to heal his broken bones later. He strikes with lethal intent. Victory is inches away. But suddenly, the ground erupts. The instructor interferes, raising a massive earth wall to save his precious student from total annihilation. The instructor steps in to save face. He declares the match over and orders them to clear the arena for the next pair. That arrogant noble has been thoroughly humbled. Will is just thrilled to finally earn his spot in class, even while the instructor seethes with frustration. With the duel concluded, Will dashes off, his mind racing through every moment of the battle. He has done the impossible. He forged his own offensive magic strong enough to crush an elite mage, all thanks to Veronica's teachings. As for the defeated trash, the instructor helps him up. Opulpus begs his teacher to keep this humiliating loss a secret from his father. Neither of them can accept defeat with grace. They are sore losers to the core. The scene shifts. Finding Will ready for his first real lecture, finally, he can study properly. This is his chance to refine his understanding of offensive magic theory. The instructor strides in, shooting a sharp glare at Will before starting the lesson. So far, the curriculum has been disappointingly basic. It seems one teacher controls the entire curriculum here. Will finds himself drawn to the magical tool creation class, reminding him of his time at the Healing Academy. Today's objective is dangerous. They are learning to craft ice bombs. As materials are distributed, Will realizes a stark truth. In his previous life, he only crafted recovery items, never weapons of war. But this is the Offensive Academy. Here, he is expected to forge tools for destruction. Combat requires dynamic mana. However, for crafting items, the specific nature of the mana is irrelevant. This is perfect. Will's massive reserves of static mana will finally be useful here. He inspects the ingredients. Fragments of an ice golem and powdered flame branches lie before him. He follows the formula, mixing the fragments carefully. But suddenly, the mana reaction spikes out of control. Using body enhancement, Will instinctively tosses the unstable mixture. The fragment detonates in midair, scattering sharp ice spikes across the room. Our protagonist is impressed by the firepower, but his little stunt is seen as a blatant act of disrespect. The instructor explodes in anger, instantly deducting points from Will's grade. The bullies snicker, especially Opulpus, who shares a knowing look with the teacher. But there is no time to rest. The next class focuses on handling magical beasts. He is handed a deceptively cute salamander. The instructor warns the lower-ranked students to stay alert. Will feels uneasy holding the creature. Suddenly, the tiny monster unleashes a cannon of fire, forcing Will to deflect the blast, but it was just a hallucination born of stress. The instructor notices his flinch and confiscates his equipment immediately. The situation's grim. Will finally understands the game being played here. The instructor allows him to attend, but only to make every moment a living hell. They are actively sabotaging his education. He has to find another way to survive. A mysterious student watches him from the shadows, noticing the injustice. Meanwhile, the harassment continues without pause. Will is forced to defend himself against physical threats and the instructor's impossible, out-of-syllabus interrogations. His academic points are decimated. Even his personal quarters are vandalized, filled with heaps of trash. When he seeks justice from the supervisor, he is punished further. They strip away his dinner privileges entirely. He is being attacked from all sides. Exhausted and starving, he collapses in his room, realizing the entire faculty is against him. Just as he made progress, a mountain of new challenges rises up to block his path. Yet, Will knows he is growing stronger. He refuses to let these petty villains break his spirit. He clings to one undeniable fact. He fought a noble and won. He has proven he has the potential to be a true attack mage. Shifting his focus to the positive, Will remembers his small victory. He managed to acquire the official textbook. Now, he can self-study and bypass their sabotage. The next morning brings a shock. The classroom is empty. The instructor is missing, and only one other student is present. It becomes clear. The schedule was changed, and they deliberately failed to inform the outcasts. Annoyed, but determined, Will approaches the solitary girl. His sudden presence seems to startle her. He simply needs to know if the class time was moved. He suspects this is yet another trap. The instructor has a blacklist, and she is on it too. They are both targets of the Academy's malice. Two outcasts are better than one. Sensing her fear, Will smiles warmly and offers her a hand of friendship. The girl is stunned. She bows her head, showing him absolute respect and gratitude. Her name is Erica Glenn. In this hostile environment, she becomes Will's first true ally. She understands his isolation. He is a late transfer and a healer. In this world, people despise healers for being pathetically weak. Will's resolve left Erica speechless. Even as an offensive mage, she possessed a humble heart, unlike the arrogant peers surrounding them. Observing her demeanor, Will realize the ugly truth. The hatred toward healers wasn't just personal, it was the very rot-infesting Schwartz Academy. Battle mages shed blood on the front lines. To them, those who cowered in the rear were nothing more than parasites unworthy of respect. Yet, in his past life, Will had stood at the absolute pinnacle of the kingdom as a legendary healer. But that prestige meant nothing here. In this den of wolves, his past achievements were merely dust in the wind. If he didn't bare his fangs now, the Academy's prejudice would swallow him whole. Erica's curiosity piqued. Why would a healer voluntarily walk into the lion's den of the offensive division? Will's eyes burned with determination. He refused to be chained by his fate as a healer. He would carve a path to the front lines, no matter the cost. His resolve shook her to the core. But Erica had her own burdens to bear as the daughter of a declining rural noble house. Without a male heir to carry the name, her family's bloodline faced the threat of total extinction. She took the weight of the family legacy onto her shoulders. If she could just become a powerful battle mage, she could claim the title of family head by sheer force of status. Will respected her ambition, but the cruel reality remained. Erica possessed absolutely zero talent for magic. An outcast with no allies, she was merely prey for the class bullies to torment. That was why she clung to Will. In her eyes, he was just a fellow failure, someone to share in her misery at the bottom of the ranks. She teased him mercilessly, unaware of the sleeping dragon before her. Will simply smirked. He was about to shatter her expectations completely. Time was wasting. Will guided her toward the correct lecture hall, where the true test awaited them. They arrived at the designated room, only to be met by the icy, judgment-filled glare of the instructor. Will offered a polite apology for the schedule change, but the arrogant instructor wasn't interested in mercy or excuses. To humiliate the newcomer, the teacher decided to test him with an impossible question right on the spot. Erica's heart sank into her stomach. She knew Will had missed the foundational lectures. This was a death sentence for his grades. Will scanned the complex formula. The professor sneered, threatening to deduct massive points if he failed to produce the perfect answer. Even the student Alpus joined the mockery, eagerly waiting to see the healer crash and burn. But Will's mind was a fortress of concentration. He seized the chalk, and the sound of his rapid writing echoed like gunshots in the silent room. The onlookers scoffed, convinced it was nothing but a desperate bluff from a hopeless student. However, the chaos on the board began to take shape. Will had unlocked the perfect magical configuration, illuminating the room with his logic. Silence descended upon the class. The arrogant instructor stood frozen, forced to admit the perfection of the answer, leaving Erica and the bullies utterly dumbfounded. Impossible. How could a novice who missed every class solve a high-level theorem that baffled even the elites? The moment class ended, Erica cornered him, demanding the secret behind his miraculous performance. Will shrugged, claiming it was nothing more than basic knowledge he had picked up from the textbook. But the truth was far more terrifying. He hadn't just studied, he had devoured the entire intricate tome in a single night. He had blitzed through the dense material, recognizing the text as a masterpiece of offensive theory. From the fundamentals to the most advanced arcane applications, nothing escaped his gaze. The book was a labyrinth of information, impenetrable to anyone without supreme magical understanding. But for Will, whose theoretical prowess was unmatched, deciphering the ancient knowledge was child's play. He absorbed the essence of offensive magic as easily as if he were reading a fictional novel. While Will smiled casually, a chill ran down Erica's spine. That book was the Academy's nightmare. It was a text so complex that even professors struggled to explain it without guidance. Shame burned her cheeks. She had called him a failure, only to realize that she was the true bottom feeder standing in the presence of a monster. Terrified of being left behind in the dust, she looked at him with pleading eyes. Will, however, offered a lifeline. He would tutor her in the mystic arts, and after all, classmates had to stick together in this harsh environment. Erica beamed with relief, but she was oblivious to the truth. Will wasn't here for the power of friendship. He was a man on a mission. Yet, even a lone wolf needs a pawn. He needed Erica for a specific purpose to advance his plans. The practical exam for general offensive magic was approaching. It was the one wall he had never been able to climb. Erica assumed a genius like him would crush the exam effortlessly, but she was dead wrong. Will harbored a fatal secret. He couldn't cast offensive magic at all, but he had a brilliant plan to cheat the system. However, this daring strategy hinges on one crucial element: Erica's cooperation. The scene shifts to the tension-filled training grounds. When discussing the art of destruction, magic is divided into two distinct branches, general and unique. General magic is the path of logic, relying on precise formulas that allow anyone to access its power through study. In stark contrast, unique magic is a gift engraved upon the soul itself, much like Opulpus's innate ability to manifest blades. Naturally, the Academy's elite curriculum dedicates rigorous training to both forms of destruction. However, unlike formulas, unique magic possesses no single correct answer. For an anomaly like our protagonist, this ambiguity is the perfect loophole to secure his victory. Tragically, he hits a wall when facing general offensive magic, a weakness his instructor is all too eager to exploit. With a predatory grin, the instructor mocks the healer, praising his book smarts while questioning if he can survive the practical test. After all, failure is the only option for a student who cannot cast even the most rudimentary spell. The instructor lays down the challenge. The objective is simple: fire a single shot at the target. He belittles Will once more, reminding him that failing such a fundamental task means saying goodbye to graduation. As the tension mounts, the instructor recalls the boy's previous unorthodox methods, how he twisted healing magic into a weapon and used it to enhance his physical capabilities. But this time is different. Pure offensive magic is impossible for a healer. He just wants this insect to forfeit and leave his sight. Yet, Will stands his ground with a confident smirk. Suddenly, the instructor's eyes widen in absolute disbelief as Will's hand erupts in roaring flames. It defies all logic for a healer to wield such power, but appearances can be deceiving. This is merely a brilliant sleight of hand orchestrated by our cunning protagonist. The truth is revealed. Erica cast the initial fireball using her general magic, which Will then secretly stored inside a salamander's tail. With surgical precision, Will utilizes auto-healing to constantly regenerate his skin while fanning the flames concealed within his palm. It is a technique reminiscent of legendary power, a cycle of infinite destruction and infinite regeneration occurring simultaneously. Even Erica questioned his sanity, unaware that she stands before a man who once held the title of humanity's greatest healer. At the critical moment, he cuts the healing flow the instant he opens his hand, creating the perfect illusion of a fireball manifesting from his very grasp. Now, only the execution remains. He unleashes the attack, striking the target with a flawless bullseye. The instructor is left trembling in sheer shock. He has been thoroughly humbled once again. The deception is so perfect that he is fully convinced Will has mastered offensive magic. He secures an immediate passing grade amidst Erica's applause and the crowd's confusion. However, Apulpus seethes with rage. After class, the noble confronts the teacher, demanding answers, but neither can comprehend the impossible feat they just witnessed. Logic dictates that there is simply no way for Will to have acquired general offensive magic. Apulpus's pride is shattered, and his hatred for the healer boils over. He threatens to involve his powerful father to obliterate the entire class if necessary. The instructor freezes, stunned by the student's ferocity, while the arrogant noble turns his back, walking away with the final command: do whatever it takes to exterminate that healer from their ranks. The corrupt teacher is now cornered. Breaking academy regulations carries the grave risk of exposure. He spent years clawing his way to this position at the academy, and he refuses to lose it all now. Weighing his options, he decides to gamble everything to eliminate the upstart healer who dares to make a name for himself. This grown man, harboring a vendetta against a 15-year-old, decides to take matters into his own ruthless hands. As dusk falls over the training grounds, the instructor summons Will for a private meeting. The teacher issues a dark threat, but Will, ever the optimist, mistakes the malice for a compliment. The instructor sneers, declaring his intent to crush the boy's arrogance for missing so many initial classes. The irony is sickening, as it was this very tyrant who refused to let Will attend those classes in the first place. Will counters calmly, explaining that he has already mastered the material through self-study and pure assistance. But the tyrannical instructor turns a deaf ear, insisting that this specific lesson is mandatory. As the authority here, he alone decides the curriculum. Therefore, right here and now, they will engage in a proper mock battle. Will senses the trap in fighting a teacher and acknowledging the disparity. The instructor offers a deceptive handicap. If Will can land even a single strike, the victory in this trial will belong solely to him. With the stakes set this high, the instructor expects the boy to fight for his life, though he never once imagines he might actually lose. The arrogance in the teacher's eyes is palpable, while Will stands silent, his mind dissecting every variable of the battlefield. Without a hint of hesitation, the young student accepts the duel's conditions, much to the instructor's twisted delight. The battle erupts instantly. The instructor slams his palm down, summoning jagged spikes of earth from the ground below. Will, however, has already analyzed his opponent's habits. He knows an earth mage relies on stability, and he weaves through the first assault with fluid grace. But the earth magic is alive. The spike twists midair, forcing Will into a desperate dance to avoid being skewered. The instructor cackles, mocking Will's evasion, but the boy is focused on the terrifying reality of earth magic, infinite ammunition, and zero cooldown. Furthermore, the range of these attacks is overwhelming, a completely different beast from the close quarters combat he is used to. Yet, the young healer refuses to yield, his senses sharpening to a razor's edge with every near-death miss. Will explodes forward, closing the gap. The teacher responds with a roar, slamming two massive walls of stone together to crush the boy like an insect. The tectonic plates slam shut with a deafening boom, seemingly sealing the student's doom. But suddenly, a shadow falls over the mage. Will descends from the heavens, a dagger gleaming with killing intent in his grasp. This is his one chance. Will drives the blade down toward the teacher's skull, but steel meets stone with a harsh clang. The mage has summoned a barrier. The force of the impact sends Will skidding back, forcing him to reset his stance and create distance once more. The viper of a teacher sneers, revealing his ironclad armor, a defense he claims is impenetrable by the likes of a weakling. He begins to lecture, his voice dripping with venom, belittling Will's confidence and mocking the very idea of a healer trying to be a warrior. However, Will stands tall, his expression shifting from focus to absolute conviction. He calmly explains that his mastery of healing has granted him a forbidden understanding of human anatomy. He realizes that the human body subconsciously limits its own power to prevent self-destruction. Muscles and bones are capped at a safe threshold. To exceed that limit is to invite ruin upon one's own flesh. The instructor takes this lecture as an insult to his pride, unaware that Will isn't just talking philosophy, he is stating a fact. If one forcibly removes those mental limiters, they can unleash devastating strength, even if it means tearing their own body apart. And for a healer like Will, physical damage is nothing but a transaction he is willing to pay. He is prepared to shatter his own bones if it means crushing the enemy before him. The boy's aura shifts, stunning the instructor into silence. As Will walks forward with the pressure of a predator, the mage panics, screaming, as Will's fist charged with self-destructive power collides with the so-called invincible armor. The barrier shatters like glass. Will's fist connects, turning the instructor's confident face into a mask of absolute agony. As the teacher reels, Will coldly reminds him that no one has the right to dictate a student's potential. His heart warmed by the memory of Veronica's belief in him. She was the light that guided him, the reason he could unlock this monstrous power hidden within his healing arts. Will knows he has evolved, but in his moment of reflection, the treacherous instructor launches a cowardly surprise attack from the blind spot. Will barely dodges the jagged stone column, but the sheer dishonor of the move ignites a fury in his blood. He had met the victory condition, yet this man dares to strike him from the shadows. The instructor rants like a madman, claiming that without witnesses, the duel never ended, refusing to accept a loss to a mere support class. Consumed by pride, the mage floods the arena with earth spells, determined to bury the evidence of his failure. Will's patience snaps. He is done playing by the rules of a man who has none. With his limiters still removed, Will vanishes. He moves with speed that defies the laws of physics, a blurring comet rushing toward his target. The instructor's eyes cannot even track the movement. Will is already there, his fist pulled back like a drawn ballista. No armor, no magic, no trickery can save the mage from the judgment that is about to land. But then impact, or so it seems. The punch halts millimeters from the face, and the world turns gray. Time itself seems to distort. The instructor watches his own destruction in agonizing slow motion, humiliated by the sheer difference in power. It is a psychological torture worse than death. He cannot scream, he cannot flee, he can only watch his inevitable demise. To the outside observer, it is a blink of an eye, but for the victim, this single strike stretches into an eternity of fear. Finally, reality snaps back. The kinetic force explodes, launching the instructor across the arena like a rag doll. As the dust settles, Will stands over the fallen mage, revealing that the time distortion was simply the ultimate application of his sensory manipulation. Unlike that incompetent instructor who hoards his secrets, allow me to explain the terrifying mechanics of what just occurred. The moment Will's fist connected, he didn't just deal damage, he triggered a high-level illusion enhancement spell. Originally, this magic is designed to heal patients with failing senses, but our protagonist has twisted it into a weapon of war to boost his own reaction speed. By hyper-stimulating his opponent's nervous system, he distorts their perception of time, making a single second feel like 100 agonizing seconds. It transforms a simple attack into an eternity of brutal, psychological torture for the victim. With the deed done, Will wears a mask of innocence, smiling politely as he asks the trembling teacher if he has finally passed the class. But before the arrogant instructor can even stutter a reply, Will's grip tightens on his shoulder like a vice. His voice drops, promising to completely eradicate every trace of the man's prejudice against healers, right here and now. The harmless student vanishes, replaced by a presence resembling a demon king, warning that if his peaceful academy life is disturbed again, there will be hell to pay. Will seals his terrifying ultimatum, and with a cheerful smile, ending the encounter. Later that night, the instructor paces in his office, sweat pouring down his face as he realizes he brushed shoulders with a monster. He once believed that every healing mage was fragile trash, fit only to take orders from the frontline mages. But this boy is an anomaly. He possesses top-tier combat instincts and a suffocating killing intent. Suddenly, the blonde noble bursts in, eager to hear about the healer's humiliation. The punk snickers, assuming Will was destroyed, but the teacher silences him instantly. The instructor has no patience for this spoiled brat's yapping and warns the noble to stay far away from Will. It is a warning for his own survival. They made a fatal error assuming Will was just an ordinary support mage. Pulpus is shocked by this rejection and tries to play the my father card, but the instructor is no longer afraid of empty threats. He practically tells the blonde punk to go cry to his daddy if he wants. Because the truth is cold, if Pulpus actually had that much influence, he would have eliminated the healer by now. The Omen family won't move an army for a schoolyard grudge, but if they keep provoking the new kid, total destruction is guaranteed. Pulpus is left seething in the hallway, unable to comprehend how the hierarchy has crumbled so quickly. After that phenomenal display of dominance, a few days pass, and classes conclude for the afternoon. Will finally finds a moment of tranquility, sensing that the blonde noble is terrified to make a move against him. With the pests silenced, our boy can finally focus on his studies. However, a sense of dissatisfaction gnaws at him. His ultimate objective isn't just school grades, it is to rewrite the timeline and prevent the destruction of humanity. The only way to avoid that dark, apocalyptic future is to transcend his current limits. While his healing magic allows for body enhancement, he has boxed himself into relying solely on physical strikes. Sensory enhancement is excellent for illusions, but it pales in comparison to the versatile destruction of offensive magic. Will realizes he must forge an entirely new combat style to survive. He takes this dilemma to Assistant Professor Veronica, seeking her wisdom once more. Will admits his approach needs refining, but Veronica holds up a hand to stop him. He braces himself for a lecture, but instead, she smiles, congratulating him on defying all expectations. Thanks to his exploits, the faculty lounge is buzzing with rumors about the legendary healer student. A support mage keeping pace with the combat elites is unheard of, and his strength can no longer be ignored. Of course, the narrow-minded teachers hate his progress, but that is to be expected from the weak. Interestingly, Veronica has kept her role as his mentor a complete secret. She never mentioned her involvement to the other staff. Knowing they disregard her theories because of her unique position, our boy breathes a sigh of relief. He wants to protect her from the political crossfire that follows him. The professor shakes her head, admitting that she is the one who is grateful. As she stated before, healers never dared to prove her theories right until now. Suddenly, she draws her blade. A dangerous glint enters her eyes as she challenges her student to a spar. Will is blindsided by this escalation, but Veronica needs to see exactly where he stands on the power scale. It is the quickest path to evolution, but our protagonist is caught off guard, panic rising in his chest. The swordswoman declares that a real enemy won't wait for him to be ready, and she blitzes forward. She appears instantly before him, steel singing through the air. Will barely manages to deflect the lethal strike at the final microsecond, struggling to hold his ground. Her attacks are relentless. She unleashes a chaotic flurry of slashes that pushes him to the brink. Even after burning all his buffs and pushing his reaction speed to the limit, he is barely surviving. But the terrifying truth about Veronica isn't just her velocity. This woman is lightning made flesh. Her blade flows like water from one strike to the next. In a battle of attrition, Will is destined to crumble first. Gritting his teeth through the heavy impacts, Will realizes the truth. He has exactly one chance to turn the tables with his limit-breaking speed. It is all or nothing, channeling explosive mana into his heels. Our boy launches forward with the roar of thunder. He hopes to catch the professor off guard. But just as he feared, she saw this coming from a mile away. The moment his blade nears her face, she reacts with godlike reflexes, a point-blank counter that literally shatters his weapon into dust. The duel is over. Despite Will's desperate struggle, the gap between him and an elite warrior is simply too vast. Veronica lowers her stance, genuinely impressed. She never expected him to pull a feint with such ferocity. She admits she had to use a magic sword just to counter him. She thought he was merely a healer with some combat tricks, but this is entirely different. The boy's current combat prowess would easily rank him near the top of the leaderboard. Yet, as always, Will finds no joy in moral victories. His hunger for strength remains unsated. She acknowledges his burning ambition. She understands that simple physical enhancement is not his endgame. Will confesses he is trying to remove the natural limiters of his body, but it is not enough. Veronica offers a new perspective. A sword is not meant for casual swinging. It can thrust. It can be thrown. It can adapt. Healing magic must possess the same versatile lethality. Frustration clouds Will's face. He has been searching for that answer, but his mind draws a blank. The beautiful swordswoman pinpoints his fatal flaw. It is not a lack of power, it is a lack of blood. He lacks the killer intuition that only comes from life or death struggles. In Veronica's eyes, raw experience outweighs theoretical knowledge every time. Even in their brief clash, Will sensed a hidden depth to her movements that he couldn't replicate. The pieces finally click into place. Will asks for more sparring, but Veronica shakes her head. She recommends something far more dangerous, a monster subjugation mission. The boy is stunned. Finally, he will face the terror of a real battlefield. He recalls the joint competition held between the three great academies Schwartz, Helik, and Zilburn. Each of the three academies boast their own masters of offense, defense, and swordsmanship. Their students are expected to handle these subjugation requests as a rite of passage. Back at Hayek Academy, he was sheltered from such missions, but now he has the chance to slaughter nightmarish beasts and forge his spirit in the fires of destruction. Steel enters his eyes. Will hardens his resolve for his first true subjugation operation. Veronica watches him with an intrigued smile, but she reminds him of the harsh reality. To participate, he must prove his worth in the selection exam, and rumors are swirling of a monster rookie among the first years. Will's new objective is clear: take the #1 spot and crush the competition. He asks for the specifics of this brutal selection process. The rules are simple but savage. The candidates will wage war against each other. Typically, 100 warriors volunteer, and only the absolute strongest are chosen. Even our battle-hardened boy is getting tired of this school's obsession with violence. Back at the Hayek Healing Academy, missions were open to anyone with the heart to serve. But the Schwartz Academy is a different beast entirely. Here, only the elite may proceed. Will takes a moment to cherish the warm memories of his old school. He wonders how his old master is faring in these turbulent times. Veronica snaps him back to reality, mentioning the prodigy student whose power level reportedly exceeds even the instructor's. This means the path to the top will be a treacherous climb. Will wonders if the assistant professor has met this hidden dragon personally. She shakes her head. This arrogant rookie avoids the teachers entirely, acting as if he is far above their guidance. He doesn't even bother to ask questions. Though, perhaps he's just terrified of Veronica's intimidating aura. Regardless, Veronica promises to personally oversee Will's training for the exam. This lights a fire in his heart. She is his best hope for transcending his limits. We cut forward to the day of destiny. The selection exam has arrived. Will steps into the arena, the training days flashing by in his mind. He radiates a new confidence. His preparations are complete. As he navigates the crowd, a familiar voice cuts through the noise. It is the chairman of the Magic Academy Alliance, Lord Arnelum. The principal beams with gratitude. He reports that his grandchild has made a miraculous recovery, all thanks to Will's healing arts. The chairman bows his head, apologizing for not checking in on the boy sooner, despite the life debt he owes him. Will waves it off with humility. He explains that while the Academy's brutal curriculum was a shock at first, he has adapted. He no longer stands out as a victim, he belongs among the elite. His ambition burns brighter than any flame. Will is determined to seize the #1 spot in the selection exam, a resolve that sparks genuine interest in the chairman's eyes. But the atmosphere shatters instantly. An instructor storms in, crushing Will's declaration and mocking his noble goal as nothing more than a pathetic joke. In this man's eyes, the young healer is an arrogant gnat, heavily underestimating the sheer weight of the class he commands. This intruder is none other than Bode, the supervisor for the field training, and a man Will knows all too well from the memories of his previous life, decades ago. Bode was hailed as the Violet Lightning, a legendary hero whose thunderous power defined the era of the Great War. However, fate is a cruel mistress. They were enemies then, and the bad blood between them has not diluted in the slightest in this timeline. The looming mage uses his overwhelming aura to intimidate the healer, preaching that the world is teeming with combat geniuses, while training is merely a grain of sand in the desert. He spits insults directly into Will's face, proclaiming that a mere healer has zero chance of victory in a domain ruled by destruction. Will maintains a stoic silence, his expression unreadable, until the chairman intervenes, suggesting they settle this clash of ideals within the exam itself. The instructor scoffs, claiming he is simply teaching the brat a lesson, before revealing that the true king of this exam will be his own student, Sirius. This young prodigy possesses a beauty and presence that seems otherworldly, as if he were the main character of a completely different high-budget fantasy epic. Sirius Blueoat is the genius carrying everyone's expectations, the destined rival that our protagonist must crush to claim the throne of first place. The air crackles with tension as the two competitors lock eyes. Even the chairman trembles with excitement at the fierce rivalry unfolding before him. Without a second to waste, the candidates march into the arena, greeted by the thunderous roar of a crowd hungry for a spectacle of violence. Will stands in the second row and spots Erica, shock coloring his face as he realizes the heiress has actually joined the fray. But her motivation is purely pragmatic. She must participate and perform, or risk having her academy allowance completely cut off. In the distance, a sinister gaze burns into Will's back. Opus is watching, plotting his move from the shadows. The chairman takes the podium, his voice booming as he congratulates the students on their survival and prays for the strongest mages to rise. He announces the first trial, a brutal preliminary round designed to cull the weak and leave only the elite standing for the true selection. It will be a chaotic battle royale, 100 students clashing simultaneously in a fight for supremacy. The arena seems far too cramped for such carnage, but the chairman smiles and unleashes his personal mana, warping reality to cast them into a separate dimension. The students gasp, unable to comprehend the sheer scale of the spatial magic that has instantly transported them. The old master stands at the very edge of the void, scattering the participants like seeds across a vast magical terrain. Will blinks and finds himself deep within a dense forest, located just beyond the academy's physical boundaries. With the teleportation complete, the headmaster's voice echoes in their minds. Survival requires wisdom, and engaging overwhelming forces is a path to certain defeat. Fate has cast the die. Every student's starting position is entirely determined by luck. Will takes a moment to admire the technique. The old man's ability to teleport mass numbers instantly is a feat of magic worthy of respect. The field training exam has officially begun. Our hero wastes no time, leaping onto a high branch and activating his presence concealment spell. Like a phantom, he masks his aura completely, choosing to move as a shadow rather than a warrior to avoid unnecessary skirmishes. A commotion below catches his eye. 3 students are already locked in a vicious standoff. One summons a massive earth golem that roars with monstrous power, while a female student wields a gigantic fairy hammer, ready to crush anything in her path. They are so focused on their duel that they fail to sense the third party, a cunning mage who blindsides them, freezing their bodies in solid ice. Will watches from above, genuinely impressed by the variety of lethal skills on display. He realizes that this exam is a goldmine for learning, not just winning. A hunger for power stirs within him. He dissects their moves, planning to integrate their techniques into his own arsenal. The dust settles, and the golem user stands as the victor, cheering loudly for his hard-fought triumph. But his celebration is cut short. Will descends like a hawk, gripping the student's head and activating his consciousness blockade in a split second. It is a terrifying technique that floods the victim's mind with emptiness, similar to the domain of a certain white-haired sorcerer. By manipulating the opponent's life force directly, Will forces a total system shutdown, though the technique requires a physical grip of iron to succeed. This is a ruthless art he mastered during his grueling training sessions with Veronica. Lost in analysis, Will's instincts suddenly scream. He twists his body, barely dodging a flurry of daggers that slice through the air where his head just was. He lands and glares. It is that same arrogant fool, Opus, only this time the coward has brought reinforcements. Opus mocks him, believing Will is just another desperate student, confident that his 3-man squad guarantees a victory against a lone healer. The ambush begins. Opus activates knife creation magic, while his lackey coats the blades in a vile, deadly poison. The third attacker weaves hand signs for shadow clone magic, multiplying the threat with poison involved. Even a single scratch spells instant death. Defending is impossible against such numbers. Dozens of lethal blades launch toward Will, hunting him down like a pack of wolves. As the assassins close the distance, Will weighed a dangerous gamble. He calculated if he could weaponize his recovery magic against them. Blocking their daggers with simple body reinforcement was becoming tedious. Cornered like a rat, he decided to unleash a technique they would never see coming. Suddenly, the earth rumbled beneath them. A massive stone barricade rose from the ground, shielding Will from the rain of steel. Alpus watched in horror as his own rock golem turned against him. That was the terrifying secret of recovery magic. It could hijack other living constructs. By infusing the construct with his own blood, the golem was reborn. It moved with a life of its own, answering only to Will's command. Although it lacked complex intelligence, Will controlled its every move like a puppet master. He activated the skill. Pseudo-life imbuement. The golem roared and charged at the three assassins. With a single swing, it crushed the first attacker's chest, sending him flying. It leaped onto the second man, the sheer weight shattering his spine against the earth. With two down in an instant, the last enemy froze in pure terror. But mercy was not an option. Will moved like a phantom, appearing instantly behind him to deliver a knockout blow. The skirmish ended in silence. Will faded back into the shadows, sending his golem ahead to scout the battlefield. His enhancement magic had limits in close quarters combat, but this golem was the perfect shield to compensate for his only weakness. Now he could observe the chaos from safety. Suddenly, a catastrophic pressure descended on the forest. It looked like a natural disaster, but this was man-made power. A beam of pure destruction tore through the trees, and Will barely escaped the blast radius. The attack scarred the very earth, vaporizing the golem and annihilating everything in its path. The forest was reduced to a wasteland in seconds. Through the dust and debris, Will spotted a solitary figure standing amidst the ruin. It was Sirius, the prodigy. His presence was overwhelming, radiating the aura of a true monster compared to everyone else. His power level was suffocating. Will hesitated, calculating if he should engage, but the system announced the end of the round. The headmaster's voice boomed across the area, commending the survivors. The preliminary trial had officially concluded. Only 4 candidates had proven themselves worthy of the next stage. The true battle would take place in the grand arena. Until the finals, the chairman ordered them to recover their strength. Teleportation magic enveloped the students. As the light of the spell took hold, Sirius locked eyes with Will. His gaze was intense, piercing through Will with a silent challenge. Will knew he only had one day to bridge the gap in their power. Then, in a flash of light, they vanished from the forest. Back in the safety of his room, Will analyzed his strategy for the finals. But peace was short-lived, as the heavy footsteps of Alpus and his gang approached. They were seething with humiliation. Having lost every single skirmish against a mere healer, Alpus was drowning in shame. As a noble of the Omen family, losing to a commoner was a stain on his bloodline's honor. More than anything, he was terrified that his father would learn of his incompetence. Yet, his lackeys had lost their nerve. Terrified of Will, they abandoned their leader, leaving Alpus to face his demons alone. Left alone, Alpus spiraled into madness and rage. He swore to crush the healer, even if he had to forsake magic to do it. Meanwhile, Will was resting in his quarters. A sharp knock at the door broke the silence in the dead of night. He sensed malice immediately. Opening the door, he found Alpus wearing a mask of fake politeness and a strained smile. Will saw right through the performance, but the fallen noble insisted on a conversation. The mask slipped, revealing pure venom. Alpus confessed his loathing for healers and admitted to every trap he had set. Of course, Will had countered every scheme with ease, turning the noble's traps into his own victories. But tonight, Alpus was not here to play games. His voice turned cold as he commanded Will to drop out of the academy immediately. The pretense of civility had completely evaporated. Will almost admired the man's tenacity. Alpus puffed out his chest, preaching about the supremacy of the nobility and the worthlessness of support classes. He spoke of his own brother, a weak healer who brought shame to the family. The mockery he endured fueled his hatred. In his eyes, combat mages were gods, and healers were nothing but trash to be discarded. It was the twisted ideology of the aristocracy, a system built on power and cruelty. Alpus tried to pressure him into quitting, but Will was not easily swayed. With a cold stare, Will flatly rejected the demand. The noble smirked, as if he had expected this defiance. He dropped his trump card. He knew exactly who Will was hiding. Using his family's vast underworld connections, he had located Will's younger sister. He knew how precious she was to him. A single command to his assassins, and she would be erased. The air in the room instantly grew heavy with bloodlust. Will's calm expression shattered. In a blur of motion, he lunged forward, grabbing the noble by the throat. He slammed Alpus into the floorboards with bone-breaking force. Will twisted the noble's arm behind his back, ready to snap it like a twig. Will gazes coldly at the noble, his decision absolute. Opulpus whines like a beaten dog, but the sickening sound of his arm snapping silences the room instantly. Rage burns in the noble's eyes. He screams that the Academy will never forgive this transgression against his lineage. But the fool has forgotten one critical detail. Will is not just a warrior, he is a master of restoration. In a flash of light, the arm is whole again, only to be shattered a second time. The scream of raw agony echoes through the hall. Restoration, destruction, restoration. The noble begs for mercy, but the bones snap like dry twigs regardless. It is an endless loop of suffering. Will smiles a terrifying smile, standing firm in his judgment. To threaten his sister is to touch the dragon's reverse scale, a sin that demands a price paid in blood. Snap. 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 The torture continues until Opulpus's very spirit shatters alongside his arm. He realizes too late this is no healer standing before him, but a devil in human skin. Just like the instructor before him, the noble learns a harsh lesson in reality. He is nothing before true power. That night, Will sends the broken man away with a cheerful wave, as if he merely took out the trash. There is not a shred of guilt in his heart. Our protagonist sleeps soundly, basking in the satisfaction of justice served. The sun rises on the main tournament. The arena buzzes with electric anticipation. Only 4 elite survivors remain. Standing in Will's path is none other than Erica, a variable he did not account for. It seems she created a fortress of flame, a barrier so terrifying that no other contestant dared to challenge her dominion. A victory without movement, a win by default. But the air around her feels strange. Will senses the hidden depth. She asks for leniency, but he is a warrior who respects his opponents with full force. Erica declares her ambition to soar to new heights. The bell rings, and the clash of ideals begins. She opens with a roaring sphere of flame. Will does not flinch. He meets the inferno head-on. It appears to be basic magic. With his regenerative abilities, such burns are merely scratches to be wiped away. This simplicity lulls him into arrogance, until his instincts scream a warning. Something is wrong. That first strike was no attack. It was a snare. Erica unleashes a relentless barrage, turning the arena into a sea of fire. But these are no ordinary flames. They cling to his skin, refusing to die out. It is a technique reminiscent of legendary unquenchable fire. Though the heat is low, the flames serve as an eternal curse upon his body. Even with constant regeneration, the continuous burn begins to drain his stamina rapidly. It mirrors the past perfectly. This is the same persistent flame she used to bypass the magical exams. The mystery is solved. This is why no one could approach her. To touch her barrier is to invite a fire that never sleeps. Her magic is a manifestation of her sheer will. The audience roars, finally acknowledging her hidden potential. In truth, they only cheer because they despise Will's dominance. Emboldened by their voices, arrogance begins to cloud Erica's judgment. She truly believes she can defeat the monster standing before her. She believes victory is within her grasp, but Will is done playing games. With a surge of mana, he doubles his healing output and extinguishes the unquenchable. She fires again, but he is prepared. He does not dodge. He seizes the flame with his bare hands, weaponizing her own magic. An incredible display of battle instinct. The healer now charges forward, his fist clad in her undying fire. Just as the devastating blow is about to land, terror overtakes her. She throws up her hands in surrender. She survives without a scratch. The referee's voice booms across the arena. Will is the victor. Yet, the victory is hollow for her evaluation. The crowd, once her supporters, instantly turns vicious, branding the offensive mage a coward and a fraud. She has always been a support, never a warrior. The crushing weight of their scorn breaks her spirit. But amidst the boos, a hand reaches out. Will lifts her up, his healing light washing away her pain, sparking a flicker of admiration in her heart. That tender moment is shattered instantly. Professor Bode stomps onto the stage, his presence radiating malice. He points a trembling finger at Will, labeling him as filth. He is apoplectic with rage that a noble mage surrendered to a mere healer. His venomous words make Erica shrink in fear. Will narrows his eyes, questioning how such a man can call himself an educator. The supervisor sneers, flaunting his rank and status. He claims his cruelty is necessary to reveal the harsh truth of this world, calling his abuse encouragement. Before leaving, He drops a bombshell: only one student will pass this tournament. And from the shadows, the top contender steps forward. It is Sirius. The prodigy passes by Will without even a glance, treating the protagonist like air. He is a devotee of absolute power. He shares the instructor's twisted philosophy: the weak deserve no mercy. The healer accepts the challenge, but the prodigy has one final confession to make. He respects Will's strength, yet Sirius is determined to crush him to prove that his philosophy of absolute power is the only truth. Let us focus on the monster standing before him. Will remembers this name from his previous timeline: a mage possessing devastating offensive magic, a conqueror whose victories are absolute. Nothing stands in his path without being reduced to mere ashes. The final showdown between Sirius and Will is about to begin. Will understands the stakes perfectly. To force the Academy to acknowledge his existence, he cannot just survive, he must defeat the prodigy. The duel erupts instantly. Sirius unleashes a cataclysmic twister from his starting position. The attack consumes the entire arena, forcing Will into a desperate dance of evasion, his speed pushed to the absolute limit. Will accelerates like a lightning bolt, trying to close the gap, but before he can strike, Sirius detonates a wind blast, knocking him back to the edge. This is a fatal disadvantage for the healer. Without closing the distance, he cannot land a single decisive blow. The two forces of nature stare each other down. Sirius analyzes his opponent's agility with cold precision. He raises a hand, condensing the air into a burst of concentrated destruction aimed directly at Will. Our protagonist realizes with horror that the previous tornado was a gentle breeze compared to this storm, which threatens to scour the entire battlefield. Barely keeping his footing, Will decides it is time to unveil his hidden card. He slams his hand onto the earth, summoning a colossal tree that leaves Erica and the crowd gasping in awe. This is the fruit of his secret training from a while ago. He recalls showing this technique to Professor Veronica, explaining how he infused raw life energy into the plant to force an evolution. He had studied the theory of offensive plant manipulation and dared to combine it with his healing arts. He wanted to revolutionize his combat style, but in the flashback, his legs gave out and Professor Veronica had to catch him. The sudden mana depletion shocked him. The ancient text never warned that this technique would drain him so completely. Veronica revealed the harsh truth: destruction is simple, but creation is costly. Healing consumes far more mana than destruction, so using life energy for offense is the height of inefficiency. Understanding the severe backlash, Will vowed to seal this ability until the perfect moment arose. Back in the present, our hero gambles everything on this move, knowing his standard attacks are useless here. He relies on the giant tree, but as it towers over the arena, Sirius severs the massive trunk with a single, casual wind blade. Will grits his teeth. Sirius possesses the ultimate defense: tornadoes that swallow the living, and storms that annihilate the land. His wind blades destroy solid matter, while the vortex protects his body. The tornado acts as an absolute barrier against anyone who approaches. Will finally sees why they call him the top candidate. But Will has evolved too. He channels his magic and launches himself into a suicidal charge straight at Sirius. Instantly, the Wind Mage expands his vortex, mocking him: "You will never reach me, no matter how hard you struggle." And he seems to be right. The moment our boy touches the storm, he is blasted away like a rag doll. Sirius smirks in triumph, but his smile freezes. A sharp pain shatters his focus. He looks down to see a wooden spike impaling his shoulder. Shock is written all over his face. Will stands tall, revealing the trap within his reckless charge. He knew Sirius could guard the air, but he could not guard the earth beneath his feet. The massive tree was a distraction. Its roots had traveled underground to strike from the blind spot below. Will asks if this obsession with power comes from Professor Bode. Sirius, groaning in pain, snarls that his teacher only instructs the strong. Our boy presses for answers, sensing the darkness behind the noble name. Sirius spits out the bitter truth of his bloodline. In his family, magic power is law. The throne belongs only to the strongest. Age, gender, and morality mean nothing. This ruthlessness has bred enemies within his own kin. Everyone is fighting for the crown, and even his father abandoned him. For Sirius, obeying his harsh master is the only path to survival. Screaming his conviction, he gathers every drop of his remaining mana, shocking the entire stadium. The wind coalesces into a majestic, terrifying dragon. Sirius roars that he will end this duel right now. As the dragon locks onto him, Will realizes the terrifying gap between them. He used to envy offensive mages, thinking their path was easy. But he was wrong. Dead wrong. It is not just talent. It is the weight of history, bloodlines, and the crushing burden of expectations. With newfound respect burning in his eyes, Will points at his opponent and declares war. "I will defeat you," leaving Sirius completely stunned by his resolve. Will slams his hand against the earth, channeling his energy. He summons the ancient catalyst to birth the legendary tree, Yggdrasil, once more. The vegetation explodes upward in a violent surge, devouring his mana reserves like a starving beast. But this high cost carries a divine reward, as long as he pours his life force into it. The tree's growth is infinite. Sirius counters instantly. He unleashes a razor wind blade that slices clean through the trunk, sending the massive timber soaring into the heavens. But when Sirius glances up, horror strikes. That single severed branch has mutated into a titan, plummeting straight for his skull. Will's eyes narrow in calculation. Sirius is funneling all his power into the wind dragon. He has 0 mana left for defense. The prediction is flawless. The massive timber crashes down with earth-shattering force, burying Sirius in a cloud of dust. As the dust settles, Sirius looks up to see cold steel. Will stands over him, blade ready. The realization hits, it is over. The winner is declared. The stadium erupts. No one expected the elite Sirius to fall, and whispers of the protagonist's terrifying hidden strength spread like wildfire, showing a true champion's grace. Will extends a hand, but Sirius is crushed, his spirit broken under the weight of his total defeat. Just as our boy tries to comfort him, the atmosphere turns ice cold. Professor Bode has entered the arena, and his eyes burn with disappointment. With a casual swing of his leg, Bode shatters the massive tree debris. He grabs Sirius like a rag doll, lifting him by the waist. He drags the boy away. Raging at the disgrace, he vows to restart Sirius's training from zero, stripping him of all progress. A suffocating silence blankets the crowd. Bode spins around, his voice booming like thunder, screaming that this brutal lesson applies to every single student. His ego cannot handle the truth. He refuses to accept that a pathetic healer has claimed the throne of victory. Will sees the injustice unfolding. He steps forward, declaring that Sirius fought with honor and that defeat does not equal weakness. But before he can finish defending his opponent, Bode silences him with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. The professor stalks toward our hero, sneering at his attempt to protect the loser. He tosses Sirius aside like trash. He spits at Will, proclaiming that in this world, absolute power is the only truth that matters. Consumed by his twisted logic, Bode declares losers are worth less than garbage. Will clenches his fists, disgusted by a master treating his disciple with such venom. He fires back, shouting that being a healer doesn't give Bode the right to trample on human dignity. Bode's eyes glow with demonic fury. He sneers, promising that Will is destined for the scrap heap because healers are fundamentally worthless in the face of true power. He points a finger at Will's chest, exposing the fatal flaw. Our boy's mana core is nearly empty, leaving him vulnerable. Bode twists the knife deeper. He calls the weak parasites, burdens that only lead the strong to their early graves. The words "dead weight" pierce Will's soul. A memory resurfaces a dark past where this very man tormented him for his lack of offensive power. Even back then, he stood his ground. He insisted that healers are the backbone of any survival team, supporting the vanguard with their magic. He screamed that without support, the front lines fall. Healers are the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Bode releases him, haunted by a ghost of the past. He recalls a disciple who sacrificed everything to buy time, only to be slaughtered by low-level beasts. That student died alone, trapped and abandoned in the dark with nowhere to run. Bode watched him bleed out, powerless to save him. He roars, vowing that he will never let Sirius die for the sake of the weak again. In a cruel, twisted way, the professor's logic holds a fragment of undeniable truth. Weakness is a death sentence in this world. As the monsters evolve into nightmares, only the absolute strongest will survive the coming storm. When the apocalypse arrives, mercy is a luxury the strong cannot afford. Even the untalented must learn to bleed and kill to live. Snapping back to the present, Will makes a reckless move. He challenges the professor to a duel right here, right now. Bode laughs in his face. He accepts the challenge, convinced a mere support class stands zero chance against a master of destruction. The referee turns pale, stammering in panic, asking if the professor has truly lost his mind. But Bode is the law here. Sirius is hauled off the field. The arena is cleared, and the death match between student and master begins. Bode cracks his knuckles, the sound echoing like gunshots. He promises to expose the depths of Will's incompetence for all to see. Will is cornered. His mana is critically low, and he is staring down a monster far beyond any student he has ever faced. Panic is not an option. He forces his mind to race, calculating a strategy for the impossible, but Bode gives him no time to think. He roars about speed and unleashes a blast of magic so bright it blinds the entire stadium. Amidst the chaos, the professor begins his final lesson. He holds up 3 fingers, the 3 absolute reasons for his inevitable victory. Mana surges like a tidal wave. First, distance to dominate the space. Second, speed to crush the enemy's reaction time. And third, the raw power to obliterate the target in a single devastating heartbeat. As he charges up the final strike, he sneers, wondering if our hero is even conscious enough to hear his own funeral rites. Will rises from the debris once again, challenging the arrogance of his opponent. He demands to see the true power that claims to end battles in a single strike. Despite his battered state, he stands tall, fully aware of the professor's lethal mastery over lightning magic. To survive this storm, he must calculate perfectly. The key is avoiding a direct strike to his internal organs, or it is game over. He knows the grim truth. If that voltage fries his brain or stops his heart, his regenerative abilities will be too slow to save him. For this desperate gamble, he has prepared a ruthless countermeasure. A blood circuit designed to conduct the lethal energy away from his vitals. Without hesitation, he drives his knife through his own hand. The moment the lightning hits the steel, it surges through his limbs and grounds directly into the earth, bypassing his heart entirely. Yet, the pain is absolute. Enduring the flow of raw electricity feels like his very soul is being seared. Now is the moment to strike back, but Bode mocks him, sneering with pity at a student who can barely stand after a single clash. Will attempts to channel mana to enhance his physical strength, but horror strikes. His muscles refuse to obey his command. Bode reveals the terrified truth. His violet lightning does not just burn, it paralyzes the nervous system, leaving the victim helpless. Will realizes the gravity of his situation. As another bolt of destruction charges up, he struggles to raise a trembling hand in defense. Driven by ego, Bode refuses to end it quickly. He wants to toy with his prey, curious to see just how much punishment this tenacious student can endure. The professor unleashes another devastating blast. The crowd gasps in horror, watching as Will takes the full force of the storm yet refuses to fall. Bode's arrogance is fueled by his flawless, unique magic. But he fails to see the fire burning in Will's eyes. The protagonist will not bow to anyone. In his mind, there is only one outcome: victory. He bets everything on one final move, pouring every drop of his remaining mana into the earth. He summons a water treasure tree from the ground below. This botanical marvel is a natural sponge, absorbing vast amounts of moisture. As a barrier, it acts as the perfect lightning rod to disperse the professor's attack. However, reality is cruel. Bode's power is overwhelming, and he slices through the massive tree with a single arc of lightning, leaving the spectators stunned. Will stands frozen as his defense crumbles. Bode advances, believing the boy has played his last card. But as the professor gloats over the fallen timber, a strange phenomenon occurs. Mushrooms begin to sprout explosively from the wreckage. A quiet smirk forms on Will's face. His plan was never the tree itself. It is a known phenomenon that fungi thrive in the wake of a lightning strike. When electricity turns a forest into a wasteland, it clears the path for new life. And the first to rise from the destruction are the mushrooms. But these are not ordinary fungi. They bring a deadly gift. They release potent neurotoxins. Bode suddenly freezes, the paralysis seizing his own body in an ironic twist of fate. Panic flashes in the professor's eyes. Will seizes the instant, knowing the gap in power has finally been bridged by strategy. He charges his fist with the last of his strength and aims for the head, but Bode is a monster in his own right. He dodges at the last second and drives a knee into Will's gut. The professor reveals his terrifying versatility. He is not just a mage, he is a master of close quarters combat, enhanced by his lightning manipulation. He scoffs at Will's clever trick. By reinforcing his nerves with electricity, he can accelerate his reflexes far beyond human limits, making the paralysis meaningless. Will collapses, clutching his chest in agony. The bitter taste of defeat rises in his throat as he realizes strategy alone might not be enough. Triumphant, Bode winds up for a finishing blow, declaring himself the supreme victor. But before the fist can connect, a steel aura intervenes. It is Professor Veronica. She stands between them, her blade drawn and humming with cold fury. Bode tries to dismiss her, calling her a meddlesome rookie. Will shivers as the pressure drops, but seeing Veronica's back ignites a spark of hope. She speaks with the weight of authority. The match is decided, and any further violence is nothing but sadistic torture. Bode tries to justify his bloodlust. He claims Will as a healer and can simply stitch himself back together. Veronica cuts through his excuses. She declares that Will is empty. He has poured his very life force into these duels and has nothing left to give. Enraged, Bode ignores the warning and launches an attack. He thinks she won't dare to strike a senior professor. But Veronica instantly charges her sword, and the two titans clash in a burst of power. Suddenly, a crushing pressure descends upon the arena. The headmaster has arrived. He stands immovable between the two forces, halting Bode's advance with a mere glance. He apologizes to Veronica for his late arrival, his voice calm but terrifying. With a wave of his hand, he declares the selection exam officially over and orders the stunned students to disperse. As the crowd leaves, Will attempts to cast a healing spell but collapses. His mana is completely dry. Veronica gently scoops him up, whispering that he fought like a true warrior. She begs him to rest, to stop pushing himself to the brink of death. But her kind words cannot silence the turmoil in his heart. The next day, Will wanders the academy halls, haunted by the gap in power he felt. It terrifies him. If monsters like Bode exist, how could humanity have faced extinction in the future? He clenches his fist, resolving to become stronger than any of them. He enters the office, and the headmaster greets him with a warm, knowing smile. The old man notes that Will's recovery speed is nothing short of miraculous. Will explains humbly. The moment his mana regenerated, his body began to knit itself back together instantly. The headmaster nods, eyes twinkling with expectation. He assumes Will is ready for the brutal field training ahead, shocking the protagonist with a sudden escalation. The verdict was finally delivered. Since Will had dominated the selection process, his passing grade was secured. But he wasn't alone. Sirius and Erica had survived the cut as well. Will immediately demanded answers. Hadn't Bode explicitly declared moments ago that every single student had failed? The headmaster stepped in to reveal the harsh truth. This deception was a yearly tradition, designed to force students into a mindset of absolute crisis to draw out their true potential. Field training was a matter of life and death. Bode had no choice but to wear the mask of a ruthless instructor. It was cruel, yes, but undeniably effective. In the timeline before the regression, Bode was a legend. He was a hero who stood on the blood-soaked front lines, fighting desperately to save humanity from total extinction. The headmaster then issued a crucial directive the protagonist needed to form a party immediately. He would join forces with students from other academies as an official attacker, accepting real subjugation requests to hunt down monsters. The reality hit Will like a physical blow. For the first time in this life, he would face them, the monsters, the very nightmare that had caused humanity's extinction in his past. Creatures fueled by magic power were branded as monsters, yet not all of them were born enemies of mankind. Some attacked solely for survival, driven by instinct rather than malice. If humanity had understood their ecological behavior sooner, perhaps they could have coexisted as neighbors instead of slaughtering each other as foes. But that hope was a delusion. 2 years from now, the red moon would rise, and the world would change forever. Bathed in that crimson light, monsters would descend into madness. Super species would unite under a single, terrifying banner, the total eradication of the human race. Then, 2 years after that catastrophe begins, the Demon King himself will descend upon the world. It is a sequence of despair. Nations will crumble, and the screams of the dying will fill the air as humanity faces a disadvantage it cannot overcome. Attack mages will be thrown into the meat grinder of the battlefield, but because the situation will spiral out of control, they will fall alongside the knights, overwhelmed by the endless tide. Even the healing mages will be slaughtered once the vanguard breaks, leaving the wounded to die without salvation. By the time Will died in his previous life, the human resistance had been reduced to ash. There was barely anyone left to fight. If they continue living in ignorance, Humanity is doomed. Will clenched his fists. He would not let this tragedy play out again. He vowed to transcend the limits of his past self, to become a force capable of crushing the great monster invasion single-handedly. But strength alone wasn't enough. He needed to find the source, the cause of the red moon that drove the world to madness. He would tear this calamity out by its very roots. The headmaster saw the fire burning in Will's eyes. It was a look of resolve that shook him to his core. Such potential was terrifyingly promising. He wondered if the faculty had actually been too cautious regarding the upcoming field training. But he assured Will that the safety measures were flawless. His message was clear. He expected greatness from Will's growth. Later, outside the campus walls, Bode approached the protagonist and Veronica. Will tried to express his understanding, to bridge the gap, but Bode barked at him once more, turning his back to walk away. Yet, his voice softened for just a moment. He ordered Will to survive and give everything he had during the training. And just before he vanished, a whisper drifted back, a quiet thank you for saving Sirius. Sirius stepped out from the shadows behind the teacher. The pride was gone, replaced by gratitude. He thanked Will, vowing to fix his weaknesses and ascend to new heights. Survival meant a chance for vengeance, and this time, his revenge would not vanish like smoke in the wind. Will grinned, urging him to become a monster in his own right. The two bumped fists, a silent pact between warriors. To Will, this was vital. Powerful attack mages were rising. In the coming war against the apocalypse, they would be the shield and sword humanity needed. Moments later, the carriage wheels began to turn, carrying them toward their destiny. Time blurred as they traveled, until the announcement came. The Duel forest loomed on the horizon. The briefing was about to begin. Veronica laid out the mission parameters. They were entering the Duel forest to subjugate a goblin infestation. She directed the students from Schwartz, Heilish, and Gilbert to their positions. Then, her eyes locked on Will. He would be leading a 4-person squad, under the supervision of a specialized instructor. Erica's voice trembled slightly as she asked about the roster. Veronica's smile was sharp. Erica would be right there beside her. Erica let out a breath. Veronica was terrifying. Yes, but fighting alongside a stranger was a fate far worse. Finally, the carriage came to a halt. They had arrived at the hunting grounds. Stepping onto the dirt, Veronica noted that the Gilbert Academy students were already on site. Will looked around, deep in thought. In his past life, he had been a loner, fighting and dying without connections. Suddenly, a blur of motion slammed into him. A girl wrapped him in a bone-crushing hug, screaming that she had been dying to meet him. Will froze, panic rising. Who on earth was this? She pulled back, beaming with energy. She introduced herself as Marie Goldrand, the principal of Schwartz Academy, and the granddaughter of the legendary Alnaram Goldrand. Will freezes in his tracks, his eyes widening in shock. The girl standing before him triggers a flood of memories from his past life. It is her, the frail girl he once treated at the principal's estate. But what is she doing here, deep within this dangerous forest? Concern fills his voice as he asks about her health, but she beams back at him. She radiates vitality, assuring him that she is stronger than ever. Her expression softens into regret. She bows her head, apologizing profusely for never finding the chance to properly thank her savior back then. Will waves it off with a humble smile, claiming it was nothing. Yet, fire burns in her eyes. She insists on repaying the life debt she owes him. Then comes the shocking revelation. She confesses that the heavens denied her even a speck of magical talent. Undeterred, she chose a different path. She enrolled in Gilbert Academy, pouring her blood and sweat into the art of the sword. Through sheer willpower, she clawed her way to the top, becoming the #1 student in the selection exams. Seeing Will's jaw drop, she lets out a playful giggle. Will is struck speechless by her transformation. Just a few months ago, this girl was fighting for her every breath. Yet against all odds, she has ascended to the peak of power in the blink of an eye. Truly a monstrous talent. She clasps his hand warmly. Fate has aligned their talents, placing them in the same party. She vows to become a blade that clears his path. Clarity strikes Will like lightning. This is exactly what the principal meant when he asked him to watch over her. But there is no time to ponder destiny. She grabs his arm, dragging him toward the new arrivals from Heilish Academy. Watching from the sidelines, Veronica and Erica exchange stunned glances. The chemistry between Will and the new girl is undeniable. Marie steps forward, her voice ringing out clearly. She calls for Yulin and Turf, anticipating their arrival from the carriage. The door opens, and the calm voice tells them to have patience. Yulin steps out, greeting the students with a relaxed smile as their assigned mentor. Will's heart skips a beat. He knows this man. In his past life, Yulin was hailed as the healer of the century, a true legend of the era. To be in the same party as such a titan, pure elation surges through Will's veins. Destiny is truly smiling upon him today. Next, Turf emerges from the carriage. Marie introduces herself politely, but Turf's gaze snaps to their joined hands. He freezes, his mind racing. His eyes narrow with suspicion. He immediately demands to know who the stranger holding her hand is. Will calmly introduces himself. Judging by his confident aura, Turf instantly assumes he must be a high-ranking combat mage. Yulin interrupts the tension. He declares that they have total freedom, and he is merely an observer. The students are baffled by his carefree attitude. Will wastes no time. He steps forward, bowing respectfully to the legendary healer, and asks for the honor of calling him master. Intrigued, Yulin asks for his reasoning. Will confesses that he walks the path of a healer but lacks a guide. He begs for the legend's instruction to refine his art. A knowing glint appears in Yulin's eyes. He has heard the rumors about this boy. Without hesitation, he agrees to take him under his wing. Not wanting to be left out, Marie scrambles forward. She insists that if Will has a master, she demands the right to call Yulin master as well. Veronica watches the scene unfold from a distance, a subtle smile touching her lips. This party, they already have an unbreakable bond. The briefing ends, and the real test begins. The subjugation mission is a go, with forward operating bases established in the huts. Intelligence reports a goblin nest deep in the woodlands. Yulin, Marie, and Will decide to strike hard and fast, heading straight for the danger zone. Turf is left grinding his teeth. As a traditional healer, protocol demands he stay safe at the rear base, far from the glory of battle. As they march toward the enemy spawn point, Marie glances at Will. She questions if he really intends to stand on the front lines solely as a support healer. Will's expression remains unreadable. He tells her to cast aside her worries. He is not just a healer, he is the overseer. He will orchestrate the battlefield, allowing them to unleash their full power while he watches their backs. Understanding his intent, they nod. If the supervisor says there are no rules, then they are free to rampage. The hunt begins. In a flash of silver light, Marie moves. A single strike, and a horde of goblins is instantly bisected. Will watches in utter shock. The image of the sickly girl from months ago shatters completely. The bedridden invalid has become a goddess of war.